and it is a very inefficient way to trade. Those negotiations are with the best data that we can have, with the best analytics that we can have. We're not competing with our brokers. We have to partner with them because otherwise we're not going to get any business. I think the challenges right now are we don't need new capital, we need new business.
Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of the Insurance Distribution Podcast. I'm here today with Joy Ferneyhough, Chief Experience Officer at Brit Insurance. Joy, how are you? It's great to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too, Martin. I'm very well.
Excellent. It's great that you can be joining us. For those that do not know you, please tell us a little bit about your journey. Tell us about what you do as Chief Experience Officer at Brit. What is currently your role and what are kind of the key objectives that you pursue?
I'll go all the way back to the beginning. So I have an econometrics degree from the London School of Economics, and I left there and went straight into banking. So I spent 15 years in investment banking, specifically in equities, research, sales and trading, but always specializing in insurance stocks and latterly sort of broader financial services businesses. But yeah, I spent 15 years researching and selling and trading equity stocks. So I spent 15 years thinking I knew everything about insurance. And then I moved into insurance and realized that I had a few misperceptions, but a reasonable knowledge of what was going on. So after 15 years in banking, sort of became a poacher turned gamekeeper, and I joined Brit, initially in a strategy role, bringing a lot of my sort of capital markets background to Brit at that time as they were going through an IPO. We then quite quickly sold the business to Fairfax, who are now our parent company, and then sort of progressed through a number of different strategic roles, more and more around the underwriting side of the business. And then I took over the broker relationship side of things. In 2018, I became Chief Experience Officer. I joined the exec committee, and essentially now I'm responsible for all of our distribution. Now, that means different, I mean, you have the podcast with the name, but it means very different things in different places. Here at Brit, it's quite a varied role, and my team do a number of different, offer a number of different services to the business, internally and externally. Internally, we do a huge amount of work with the underwriting teams and the claims team, looking at the tools, analytics, data that we can bring to them to help really hone in their distribution strategies alongside their underwriting appetites and underwriting strategies. We do a huge amount of survey work. So we survey a lot of brokers, a lot of cover holders, trying to understand what's important for them so that, again, we can position our value and service proposition to respond to that. And then externally, you know, a large part of my day-to-day is being out in the market, making sure that brokers, clients, cover holders understand what the Brit strategy is, and also being able to bring that outside-in view back into the business. So, you know, there's no point us going off one track if all our brokers are going off in a different direction. So actually understanding a lot of what our brokers, cover holders are doing and thinking about right now is actually incredibly valuable to bring that back into the business, to both my exec colleagues, to our underwriting colleagues, and to our claims colleagues as well. So it's a varied life, it's a chaotic life, but it means that sort of I get to see across the business, and I get to go out into the market selling the Brit story and bringing back what the market sort of temperature and mood is like at the moment.
Excellent. Just as a side note, I think we dive right into Brit, but just in case, like what type of products do you specialize? I understand this is commercial insurance, but what are kind of your day-to-day when it comes to products that you mostly work with your cover holders and at the same time your broker channel?
Yeah, so we're a specialty insurer. So we're quite a simple structure. We're a Lloyd's syndicate, and so really sort of span across the diversified bucket of classes that Lloyd's writes. So marine, energy, property, casualty, cyber, financial and professional lines, that whole sort of real specialty, complex type risk, which comes to London for a reason because it can't get placed elsewhere in domestic, more standard markets. We also have a platform which is growing in Bermuda, which is specifically for our reinsurance business. But ultimately, all of what we do is transacted through intermediaries. because of the specialty nature, we have to transact through specialist brokers and specialist MGAs on the delegated side as well.
Excellent. And this combined to your day-to-day, you were mentioning that you spend a lot of time working with your channel, I mean, the brokers, also with the policyholders to understand what are kind of their needs, and given that you're a specialty. But what comes not only in the coverage side, but also on the experience side, relate the relationship with, in this case, the carrier or the reinsurance, that you take a look and that affects your day-to-day?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I suppose that the market dynamics naturally have an impact on that. So I think at the moment, obviously, we're entering a softer side of the market. So the bargaining power on our side of the relationship versus the broker side of the relationship is changing, and we're coming under pressure on signings. We're coming under pressure from commissions because brokers love to increase commissions in this type of marketplace. But I think what we're trying to look at, and the things that are really making a difference for us in terms of how we work with our brokers is a couple of things. One is partnership, and the second is clearly data, technology, and how we can trade more efficiently with our partners. I think on the partnership side, something that's becoming increasingly apparent is that, getting away from just the day-to-day transactional nature of what we do and really trying to deepen the relationships that we have across the whole business with our broker partners. So all the way from CEO through myself, through CUOs, through our underwriting managing directors, and into the underwriting teams. Having that connectivity, having that understanding of what the brokers are looking for, but also from our own risk appetite and being very clear on that, means that we can be a lot more stable and consistent for our broker partners, which I think is absolutely key through any type of cycle, but particularly right now in the softer market cycle. At Brit, we are specifically looking at trying to lead as much business as we can. I think being a leader is really important in terms of the expertise we can bring, in terms of the claim service we can bring, in terms of the service proposition and the accessibility. And those are all elements that we've worked very, very hard on improving from our side of the business. So I think that partnership piece is just becoming more and more key, particularly as brokers look to do more with less, being front of mind, being seen as, a really strong leader, a really stable, a really consistent partner makes a difference across both lead business and follow business as well. I think the other element is clearly the investments that we and others and brokers are now making in data and technology. The conversations we're having now are very different to what we had 5-10 years ago, because we have the amount of data that we have, things like the pipeline data that brokers share with us, the analysis and analytics that we have on our own book. We're moving away from sitting with a broker and them saying, oh, no, but we show you everything. No, you definitely see everything, to, well, actually, we know for a fact that we don't now. So I think having that deeper level of data and analytics is changing the conversation. It's making a much richer conversation, a much more educated conversation, and that can only be a benefit. And I think from an internal technology perspective, we're all investing in trying to make underwriting processes more efficient. We're all across the market trying to invest in quicker service, quicker turnaround times, better pricing, better aggregate management. I think we're doing a good job at it at Brit, and I hope that then means that when we get to a point where we are connecting directly with brokers and cover holders via API or whatever other systems we're using, that we're in good shape to be able to really transform the speed and efficiency with which we can trade together.
And now that we're touching on technology and data, there's of course AI coming in every kind of conversation that we're usually having, like kind of technology evolved into AI. There are a lot of things that AI can automate, but certainly the relationship that is built of trust, not only with the carrier, but also with the broker, it's something that probably will never replace. In which things you think AI has a very good space, particularly in the space that you're currently working, right? In specialty risks, through broker channel. And which are things that you think AI, okay, it's not built for that purpose, but then humans will still be dominant, not now, but in the near future too.
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you, Martin, for securing my job for a number of more years. Distribution
I
definitely
don't have the
cannot be
crystal ball,
replaced.
but I think so. Yeah.
We cannot be replaced by AI. Can I take that back to my to my boss? No, but I think you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I
Let's do it.
think look, I think the focus of AI right now is clearly on taking away the heavy administrative burden and the low value tasks that any of us in underwriting, claims, distribution, front office areas are doing right now. And let's face it, there is a lot of that stuff that is still going on, and it is a very inefficient way to trade. So quite clearly the focus is on how do we automate more of that? How do we use AI to help us with that? I think from a Brit perspective and my perspective certainly is, AI will therefore eradicate the low value work that we're doing and allow us to focus genuinely on high value tasks, which in our sort of area of the marketplace is, going out and winning new business, negotiating really difficult, complex trades. As a leader, there's a lot of different things come into writing a large, complex piece of cyber business or property business or casualty business. And the more time we can allow our underwriters to do that, and less time with the poor sort of low high admin tasks, then that can only be a benefit. I think the second layer then will be how can AI improve the level of data and analytics that we're bringing to the teams so that those negotiations are with the best data that we can have, with the best analytics that we can have, meaning that, we get the best deal for the client, the broker wins, we win. That's sort of the dream model. So I see it as a two-stage process. It's, let's automate the low value admin stuff first. Then let's, have a look at how AI can really develop further the great data and analytics that we're already getting. But ultimately, to your point, those negotiations are complex, and the relationships that we rely on to be able to even get to that table to have the conversation are unlikely to be disrupted by AI, I would feel, certainly in the near to medium term.
Yeah, connecting this with one of the things that probably makes your day to day quite interesting and challenging is combining the incentives of the underwriting teams, the claims teams, the distribution teams, so that they can feel all together as one team and not separate teams because they have clearly different incentives. Probably if we spend more time in the relevant work and not on the admin stuff, we can spend more time getting these teams together. But up to today, like what kind of initiatives do you do so that your team feels like one altogether and not separate pieces of the same puzzle?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of steps in the office. That's probably the first thing, and it sounds very simple, but actually, a lot of what happens in distribution is quite simple stuff. It's just getting people together, having the right conversations, whether that's internally or externally. I think for me, the biggest thing that works is that the distribution team at Brit is there to enable and support the work of the underwriting and claims team. We're here to make sure that broader opportunities come into the business that suit our strategy. And we're also here as an escalation point, right? That, ultimately it's, as you said, it's a Friday. I'm sure about 5:30, there'll be a couple of angry brokers on my phone saying, well, your underwriters are doing this or that. But, that is a large part of what we do. So I think, the fact that we are an enabler and the fact that we are, bringing value to the teams, whether that's the tools, the analysis, the insight that we can bring from the outside, I'd like to hope that an underwriter or a claims professional will say, wow, like Joy helps me do my job and she goes out into the market and she's got my back. And I know that at 5:30, when someone rings and moans, she's going to have my back again. So but that's sort of how we work it at Brit. I mean, we're fortunate because we sit on 2 floors and everyone's in the office pretty much all of the time. So it's a lot easier to have that when you work in that type of environment. But, I think, from an incentive perspective as well, we have a very long-term stable shareholder. The whole business is remunerated on the underwriting results. So there is a clear unified focus for everybody in the business, whether they're in underwriting, claims, or a number of the support functions, to deliver that combined ratio and that underwriting profit. And that does make things a lot easier, I suppose, in terms of bringing people together and getting them moving in the right direction.
And from the experience side, like what kind of, I understand your broker, which is your main channel, as you mentioned, manages most of the relationship with the cover holder. But then at the same time, you're providing a very relevant service to the cover holder. How much of your day-to-day comes to understanding the satisfaction, the NPS, you call it, of that cover holder versus your channel? Like, how do you balance that?
Yeah, no, and it's not just that. I mean, I suppose for a market like ours, the challenge is always getting closer to the client, because you're always going to have an intermediary in between. And that, we talk endlessly about that. I think, what's interesting on the reinsurance side, we do a lot of work now around sort of what our proposition is to the client. And I think that's a market where you can do that in combination with the broker. I think on the delegated side with cover holders, equally so. I think we have to remember that the brokers are our distribution. In a marketplace in where we work, they are our distribution. So we have to work as a partnership with them to get closer to the client. We're not competing with our brokers. We have to partner with them, because otherwise we're not going to get any business.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I was trying to not to skip the step, but understanding like direct feedback from the customer. What you're mentioning is, okay, let's do it together with the broker, that it's the one that handles the relationship, but having exposure to how the customer has been experiencing a claim or the underwriting process that it had, although it had it with the broker, is probably something relevant for you to have knowledge about, not to skip the step.
Yeah, and I think also, I think I touched on it earlier. One of the things we do is we do quite a lot of survey work. So we go out and survey, clients, cover holders, as well as our brokers, just to understand exactly that. Like, what's important to you? What makes a difference to you? What does great service look like? What does a great product look like? What does good claim service look like? And we're constantly thinking then about how we tweak both the product, the appetite, the value proposition, and certainly the service proposition to respond to that. But I think, like anything, like you've got to listen to your customer, irrespective of that's a few pieces down the chain. If we can try and do that, then we will benefit.
And to start kind of closing the conversation, which are the things that you're mostly positive about in the near future? And this could be lines of risks, types of partnerships, maybe reinsurance arm, that you understand that Brit will grow and keeping a dominant position in the market, which you are betting for.
Yeah. So I mean, we talk a lot of Brit about being a leader and a strong leader. And I think our focus really at the moment is we've got a number of classes where we genuinely feel, and the market feedback is that we have that position. I think right now what we're trying to do is broaden that out to more classes. We're very strong across cyber, across property, terror, cargo, healthcare, those classes, they make up well over half of what we do on the insurance side. And we're trying to broaden that out to more classes. On the reinsurance side of things, that's definitely a key strategic target for us. With Bermuda just getting off the ground in 2025, we're already up to $250 million there. So that's a big strategic focus for us, because we see reinsurance as a growing part of our business. But outside of that, we have to react to market dynamics. As I said, we have a very strong, stable investor who cares about bottom line, not top line. So we can be a bit more disciplined, shall I say, than some others in the market, particularly at this type of time when things are getting more challenging. I think more broadly from an industry perspective, though, I think we are really excited about strengthening and deepening our partnerships with all of our key brokers, cover holders, clients. I think we see that as something that will become increasingly important going forward, particularly as things start to automate more and we have more AI and technology coming in. And I think over the next 12 to 18 months, we will start to see some real step change in terms of how we're trading digitally with our brokers, probably first and foremost on a follow side, but we're very keen at Brit to explore what we can do in terms of trading more digitally the lead side as well, because the more we can get speed and efficiency and better product out, the better for everybody.
And to finalize, one quick question that will drop me to a larger question. Who convinced you to join the insurance market after being in capital for 15 years, like to make that change?
Yeah, so I was approached by the private equity owners of Brit to move to another bank because this was ahead of the IPO, and I said, well, I'm sort of thinking about slightly changing my career, and so I actually came to Brit and met with the then CEO Mark Cloutier and Matthew Wilson, who are now very, very, very great friends of mine. And they said, why don't you come here? And I said, what am I going to do? And they said, we'll find something. Just come and work with us. We like having people with different backgrounds and different perspectives. And I'm still here 13 years later. So I think that's what I really love about Brit is, what I really love about Brit is we have a lot of people who've been here for a long time, and we have some great people, and we have some really fun people. And I think, for anybody, our industry is hard, but it's also incredibly rewarding. It's a very unique industry to be in, very collegiate, very collaborative.
No, but it's typical that people don't necessarily, unless they're actuaries, they don't necessarily start thinking about insurance as their journey. But then once they get in by either complete randomness or maybe someone from the family or a close friend was in insurance and they got, it's usually, and based on multiple of these conversations, that they stay long enough. But I wanted to close with understanding, like, given that you've been in both sides, in the capital markets, in the insurance market, of course, you are working understanding the insurance stocks, but do you see any perspective of these two fields coming closer together, bonding tighter? Like, how do you see them interacting, or they're still in the same as it was 13 years ago?
No, I think it's changed radically since I moved across. Back then there was cat bonds. The ILS market was really just getting off the ground, and there were a number of sidecars. And now there's a whole raft of investment vehicles and third-party capital participants in a number of different areas of the market. I think the challenges right now are we don't need new capital, we need new business. And I understand that, with interest rates where they are, and having had, some really strong underwriting results for the last number of years, naturally, these very smart PE, hedge fund, even long-term value investors are looking at the sector and thinking it looks interesting and the returns have been great. It'll be interesting as the market softens to see whether that's still the case. As I said, we don't necessarily need new capital in the industry as a whole. We need, more business. I think the other question at the moment is what will happen with private credit. There's obviously a lot of talk in the market, and there's been a lot of private credit come into our space as well. But I mean, fundamentally, I think what's great is that the capital markets have recognized the value and the attractiveness that our market can deliver. And so it's here to stay. I think, like anything, it will be somewhat cyclical. And I think they will pick and choose whether they want to invest in markets, whether they want to invest in intermediaries, into MGAs, because we're seeing capital flow into all different areas, and particularly more into some of the longer tail classes, which we haven't really seen before. There's a number of vehicles now and a number of investors willing to take much longer tail exposures. So that will be interesting to see how that pans out. But yeah, it's interesting times.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, we have final 3 questions. These are more on the personal, professional connection, that are short questions. This is kind of a short ping pong, if that makes sense to you. The first one, if you have to recommend a book, fiction, non-fiction, whatever you like, to the audience, which book would you pick?
So my reading is very lowbrow. I would say recently I read the series of books by Don Winslow about the Mexican cartels. That's fiction. It's excellent. I think the first one's called The Power of the Dog. Really, really good books.
Excellent. If you have to say what is kind of the person you'd pick to have dinner, either dead or alive, which person would you pick?
I would pick my son, just mainly because I don't see him very much. He's 9.
Okay.
And yeah, that's part of it's a part of the role, isn't it? It's juggling. So yeah, and he's very engaging and very fun, and we'd spend the whole night talking about sport, no doubt. But yeah, that's a very naff answer, but that would be my answer.
Okay, excellent. And finally, let's say we have the opportunity to speak with Netflix. Do you say we have a chance on pitching a good series about the insurance sector, or would you rather say, yeah, it is not that attractive?
I think it would be a wonderful series about the industry. As long as like Gwyneth Paltrow could play me, that would be good. And
yeah. We'll try to pitch it. Yeah, makes sense. Joy, this was a great conversation. Thanks
Brilliant.
a lot for sharing all your experiences, all you're doing. Congrats on all the work. Brit keeps a dominant position in the market, and hopefully for the next years too. So we'll know the fruits of these results, and AI will not replace relevant people in the sector. Absolutely,
yes.
It will change.
Thank
the
you
way
so much.
So
it's great to meet you.